Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, October 28th. Akron's only mayoral debate is now behind us. Did we learn anything new about the candidates? Rape Stowe as a Twitter hashtag? What's going on at a local high school? And we sit down with Akron Superintendent David James to talk about issue 14. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. About a week and a half now until the elections, but a lot on the line, a lot of discussion. Let's get to it. Great to have with us Bob Dyer here from the Akron Beacon Journal this week. Good to welcome Phil Trexler, also from the Akron Beacon Journal. And always great to see Ed Esposito here this week from WAKR. It was Akron's only mayoral debate. On Monday, Jennifer Hensel faced off with Akron Mayor Don Plisquellic. The headline the Beacon shows is that Mayor Plisquellic says Jennifer Hensel really isn't taking this seriously. Does he need to make a jab? Do we learn anything from this debate, Ed?
Thanks for that open-ended question. We learned that it's like there are times watching the administration. It's like watching the Mean Girls clique in high school. He didn't need to take that shot at her. I think anybody who listened or who was there, she wasn't prepared for it. She was full of generics. Didn't get into any specifics. Wasn't a very strong presentation on her part. She seemed nervous, but so you need to kick somebody down that you're already beating 69-2. I don't think that was quite the Kenmore Cardinal way back in the days of the quarterback, but it sure seems like that's the way it is at City Hall. Having said that, he still has a mastery of what the issues are, and he's going to win. That's my take.
He loves the football analogies, Plisquellic does, and to me this is like Ray Lewis standing over a sacked quarterback gloating when the quarterback's a high school kid. I mean, it's needless. Why would you do something like that? He's the longest serving mayor in the history of the city. You know, you don't need to do that. Lighten up.
I came away feeling sorry for her, you know. She was
really,
yeah. She was getting beat up on, and it wasn't a fair fight. It's not going to be it's not going to be a fair election. I mean, it is fair, but it's going to be a blowout, and just take the high road. I remember 10 years ago, Jody Miller begging the mayor to be more statesman-like, and here's an opportunity for him to be that. And
but
again,
surprising at all, though, based on how we saw the end of the Democratic debate.
No.
I mean, there were jabs there at the end as well.
Well, it was and to go to the jabs there. I mean, I did a commentary on WAKR that it was reminiscent of the debate and the snide comment he made about Mike Williams and the girlfriends in the Democrat debate, which was unnecessary, which he then kind of disavowed and backed off, which is kind of cowardly. It's the kind of thing that you see from a bully. Again, I go back. This is like Mean Girls high school theatrics. But then he made some comment at the end of the debate about seeing things about Jennifer Hensel. Supposedly the big smoking gun is that she wanted an appointment to an open judgeship, even when she was running the mayor. And I'm just like, so? Politicians don't do this. This mayor, at one time wasn't mulling over potentially a run for governor. It's the nature of the beast that politicians look at what's out there. Whether she applied or says she was interested in a judicial thing, why not just come out and say it? Why are you being snide about it? Why are you being sneaky about it? The whole thing, folks that were there, at the podium, he's doing 1, 2, 3 kind of hand signs. His supporters do this again. It's high school. The guy's been in office for over 24 years. To Bob's point, at what point do we see Don the statesman?
Two things that stood out that I looked online. Jennifer Hensel's website, henselforakron.com, hasn't been updated since October 10th. And her Facebook page for her candidate, as a candidate, has no new information and only has 65 likes after being up for a page for my cat could probably get 65 likes by the end of the weekend. And I say those things because social media is such a big part of the election cycle. So is there validation to Plisquellic's point that she's really not even trying?
Well, you're not going to ridicule your cat. I mean,
true.
You don't. I mean, he doesn't need to do that. It's self-evident. So, as Ed said, be a statesman.
She's taking one for the team here. Let's face it. I mean, no Republican's going to be elected. Somebody's got to be on the ballot. She's on there. She's throwing her name out there, circulating it throughout the community, trying to get some recognition. So look, what? She's.
But there were those that said Brian Williams took one for the team, or that Mike Callahan took one for a team in previous mayoral elections. But those were a lot more fight in the campaign.
Right. Well, in the first place, she really hadn't been a candidate before, certainly at this level. No. Maybe going back to high school. Or running for something in college, in class, but she hasn't been again at this level. As to being a serious candidate, how can anybody be a serious candidate when the existing 24-year veteran mayor sucks up every dollar that there is? I mean, let's face it. I mean, look at what Mike Williams did in terms of fundraising, and he's been on council almost as long as Plasquelic's been mayor. You couldn't raise money, and official Akron, went up and created this huge fund, which is de facto Let's Support Don Fund. So, there is no money for anyone running against Plasquelic. I don't think anybody running can be serious about this.
Well, when we talk about dollars are a big part of what anyone who wins the mayor's job will have to decide. Bob, you writing this week about small dollars not being spent on something that has turned into a bad eyesore.
It really has. I guess, excuse me, the first thing I guess we need to keep in mind is that the Balch Street Athletic Club is not supposed to be a country club. Typical suburban athletic facility is $600 a year for an individual membership. This is $200. So it's a little bit, you get what you pay for, but this is ridiculous. I mean, the place is an absolute wreck. Excuse me. The lockers are, I saw one row of lockers, the first one I approached. Out of, I think, 10 lockers, 6 of them were inoperable. There's paint peeling off the walls. The sauna, the door is so warped that you can barely open it. You get inside and the boards are sticking up and splintered. You go in the gym and one of the backboards is totally tilted to an angle, and the place is filthy. The nets, 3 of the nets are non-existent.
Owned and operated by the city.
Owned and operated by the city. It's an 82-year-old facility. It was about abandoned in the early 80s when Dave Meeker bought it. They put some money into it, turned it into a private club. Sold it to the city, and the city had the YWCA run it for a while till the Y went broke. Then the city took over the operation as well, and they just don't have the money to keep it to the level it should be. I mean, it's really a mess.
Well, I think this goes to the detractors of the Plasquelic administration who are going to point out that you're spending money on a lot of other things when you can't take care of your own backyard, and that certainly is evident here. They say they don't have the resources, they don't have the manpower to make these improvements, but obviously they're dedicating money to other areas of the budget and not taking care of it. And it's an eyesore, and it's disappointing that such a facility is allowed to continue to go into such disarray.
Sure. Sign of the times?
Well, a sign of the times. I wonder how much it would cost to bring it up to standard. I mean, could you reallocate the money that's being used for the gym, the downtown city center gym, which has also been an issue here?
They put a couple million in that, is my understanding.
Yeah, would you not put it into the Balch Street Rec Center?
Well,
it has a pool, right?
Yeah, the pool's in reasonably good shape.
Yeah, it has a pool, has basketball courts, has all the requisite. I mean, the police department now, they worked out this deal where they get, instead of the fitness money, they get the fitness club and the facilities. Why not put it into something that the city owns?
Well, it would take an awful lot of money. I'd probably question bringing it up to the full level it could be. They need, for example, the first thing they need is a $100,000 dehumidifier to really solve the peeling paint issues. So it would be a money pit. But the thing I object to is the small things that you could do. A basketball net costs $350. Go to Dick's Sporting Goods, you can get one for $350. Half of them are missing or hanging by one thread. That kind of stuff is inexcusable.
Absolutely.
But does the city risk the ridicule if they had put money into this in these tough economic times for them, the Bob Dyers of the world, the Phil Trexlers of the world, the Ed Esposito's jumping on them going, how can you spend $1 million on a gym when you're laying off or letting go or not renewing city workers?
Well, they risk that unless, of course, people are using the rec center. And, this is where you get into the vicious circle. If it's a dump, people aren't going to come down to it. They're not going to spend any time with it. They'll drive another 5 miles and go somewhere else. So, if you don't fix it, they won't come. So why is it open?
Well, there are still a lot of people using it, and a lot of the folks who are going there can't afford a better facility. So it does serve a purpose. But again, I'm not advocating throwing millions into it, but I think you could do some of the basics and really clean it up.
I mean, it doesn't cost a whole lot to slap some paint up there, and obviously the dehumidifier is an issue, but still. I mean, they're finding money for other projects, and you've got to find it for this.
To his credit, the mayor has on occasion stepped in on stuff like that. When it was running good golf course, he wasn't afraid to pull the trigger on people that could be considered a friend. and kind of reorient the management there and get things done right. So maybe that's a question of what he has to do at Bulge.
Will the city spend some money, though, after this story?
Dave Lever said they're going to address the men's locker room the next fiscal year. There's just not a whole lot of money to spend. I mean, Dave Lever's bottom line was, this is what small government looks like.
I want to talk about where people can work out, though, as we move this discussion now to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
There is high school humor, and then there is just poor taste. This week, some students at Cuyahoga Falls created a hashtag on Twitter called Rape Stowe. There's already a pretty good rivalry between Stowe and Cuyahoga Falls. They'll play in football tonight. Ed, there is the abyss, and then there's going way over the top.
Oh, this one goes over the top. And to be fair about it, there was a Rape Falls, too. So, I mean, it's not as though it was just the, the black tigers who were, hunkering down in mom's basement, figuring out Twitter hashtags late into the night. But, yeah, I mean, it's certainly in bad taste. I mean, everyone we talked to from speech experts, Dr. Ranson at the University of Akron has done a lot of research on aggressive speech. Terry Heckman at the Medina Summit County Battered Women's Shelter and Rape Crisis Center. Nobody says that the kids literally meant rape. They understand this is sports. Anyone who goes to a Browns-Steelers game is going to see this. But that's the word they
use here.
And you see words just as bad, and you hear words just as bad up at a Browns-Steelers game. Let's be honest about this. So, but it's in the world of Twitter, it's not just a T-shirt you buy from a sidewalk vendor or something you hear some drunk yelling at the stadium. It's there forever, and it's there for the world to go into.
What I find most offensive, too, is that the students that I've heard interviewed are defending it, saying it's no big deal, it's okay. And these kids just don't get it. Mm-hmm. They're not. They don't talk about how offensive it might be to certain people who may have been the victim of rape, and they're certainly not.
Who may even attend their school.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. They're just oblivious to the whole issue at hand, and that's what I find most offensive. These kids just don't get it.
How do you get the point through to these kids?
I think if I'm a teacher or a coach, I bang some heads together and say, "Look, you guys think this through. Maybe explain it to them." Apparently, they just haven't given it any thought.
I think there was some of that. It's interesting. We sent our reporter Aaron Coleman to the bonfire last night. They had at Falls High School, and before he was told by school personnel to leave the property, so which is a whole other issue. But so he was talking to the kids, and some of them thought it was clearly wrong. Others thought they hadn't. There was one faculty member and one student who said, yeah, there had already been some heads banged together. Mm-hmm. Superintendent wouldn't tell us that. The superintendent didn't want to come in and do an interview with us. Superintendent from Stowe didn't want to, the athletic directors. I think they wanted to handle it in their own way, but this was an opportunity for them to step up and do it in a public way and look at it as a teachable moment. I mean, this isn't necessarily like, all these, jerk students at Stowe or jerk alumni at the Falls. Let's make no mistake. Maybe it's not just students that are really, hyping this up. But it was a teachable moment that is it's going to be a teachable moment that plays out in private now. Maybe this is something that should have been played out.
And a topic we've talked about before are school districts disciplining students for what is said on social media. If it pertains to bullying via social media, it can still happen outside the school.
Well, if you're saying rape somebody, isn't that bullying?
In other words, are the school district's hands tied, though, as to what they can really do? Because this isn't happening at school.
Well, in terms of discipline, to Bob's point, I don't think necessarily banging heads means suspensions. But I think, again, it's a teachable moment. It's a time to bring students in. You go to any company, companies have sexual harassment and racial diversity sensitivity training that that the politically incorrect roll their eyes up and about. But the fact of the matter is companies do it because they want to help reduce the liability. It's also the right thing to do because you want to impart that this is not our culture, that we tolerate that type of behavior. So here was a chance for the Falls and the Stowe. Maybe you call them into the auditorium and you do mandatory 1 hour. And to Bob and Phil's point, maybe you bring in someone from the Rape Crisis Center and say, okay, let's talk about the word rape. Here's what it means. Here's someone who had this happen to them. You really want to use this word to describe a football game? That's an opportunity to do that kind of stuff and talk about this.
Amen.
Whatever happened to beat Stowe?
If it had been Kilstow, would anybody have raised an eyebrow?
Both teams are 0-4, so maybe they need to. In the league, they're both 0-4, so maybe they needed some more.
There is no postseason. This is the last game. So this was the last time for a teachable moment, unless they do it during the basketball
What I haven't
season.
seen in the copy so far, and I've been out of town, so I'm just catching up on the topic, is anybody trying to drive home to these kids that what you just put on Twitter will live forever. And 20 years from now, if you run for public office, somebody could bring this up.
It's amazing how naive some of these kids are. 3 years ago, when MySpace was a big deal, I just got online and looked around for all the high school kids doing crazy stuff, wrote a big story, and half the people who contacted me said, "You're invading my privacy." I mean, it's called the World Wide Web for a reason. Anybody can go see it, and they just don't think it through.
Yeah, including employers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, if any of the presidential candidates of today, and we had a tweet of them from 25 years ago encouraging rape, whatever, wouldn't it be an issue?
My prediction is you're going to see those kind of stories 25 years ago from now, because they are going to be digging around in the internet caches from 25 years ago.
Yeah, it'll be amazing to see what happens. But from what could be the future history, if that's a phrase, to current history, the Carousel Dinner Theater, we knew got a new owner. Now it looks like it's going to have some new occupants. It's going to become a church. Of all the things I expected for that space, I think people, some of them will be surprised that this is going to be its future use.
You know, we talked to Gary Diodato, and I know the Beacon Journal did too, about this space, and the fact of the matter, he really wanted to consolidate a variety of his operations into this one location. It's a great location. It's got 12 acres. It's got a big building in there. Would have been fine, except the cost just didn't work out. It wasn't effective. It was going to be too costly for him. But in terms of having, for lack of better, a performance space, to be honest, is part of today's worship model for a lot of churches. I mean, if you go to the chapel, let's be honest about it, it's a giant theatrical presentation for worship. I mean, it's just the way it's set up. It's a giant auditorium. So to that end, having that sloped stage up and have the ability to actually go in and do something like that is perfect for a church.
The thing I can't quite figure out is, a year ago, this church could have bought this thing for $470,000. They paid $770,000, 64% more in a year. Both sides said the hand of God was at work actively in this deal, and I'm thinking, did God tell the church to spend 64% more the following year? I don't get that at all. I mean, maybe there was some renovation done before they figured out that this wasn't going to work logistically for them. But that's an enormous difference in a year, and that's the sort of the X factor I can't figure out.
Whether you like it as a church or not, Phil, isn't it still good to see that it's going to be used?
Certainly it's going to be used. I think a lot of folks would prefer something more in the lines of what was there before. It was a destination spot. It was an Akron landmark. I remember covering the story when it broke. I think it was on a New Year's Day 3 years ago, when it came down that it was closing up, and certainly it's a good step for the church. It gives them a nice venue there, but I think ideally, I believe the city would have preferred an entertainment spot like it was there before. It's not going to happen, and it's going to be a church, and it's going to have limited reach for the general public. So it's better than sitting vacant, but I think there was a preference there for something more.
You can get your entertainment on Sundays.
Yeah, right. Watch it, Bob.
Well, up in Cleveland, the front row closed, and those had glory years. The Carousel Dinner Theater had some glory years. Doesn't take away from the history of it, but you got to move on. Times, to your point, I mean, the times are changing.
Yeah, we'll have to track it and see if the audiences then are shifting to the local Weather Vane Playhouse or Coach House or any of those, or up to Playhouse Square, where those people have really gone, and we'll see where that goes over time, and when we'll continue to talk about it here on NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
Education is always an issue when it comes to an election, and coming up in just a matter of days, Issue 14 comes before the Akron voters, a $5.5 million levy, an operating levy for the Akron Public Schools. But what's really at stake? Joining me now is Superintendent David James from the Akron Public Schools. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let me just say this. In this election cycle, in this economy, are you crazy to put a levy on the ballot right now?
Well, remember, this is going on my fourth year as superintendent, and my second year did not put a levy on the ballot. The following year didn't put a levy on the ballot. And we've tried to hold off as long as possible. And we've made some cuts along the way. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of changes in state funding and also our local revenue declining because of declines in property valuations, we really have to do this. And we're very thoughtful in looking at the amount. I mean, it really could have been a 10 mil or 11 mil levy, mm-hmm. and said, you know what, we're going to have to continue right-sizing the district, changing some of our operations, and then asking the public to share in some of that responsibility, and trying to be real thoughtful about the amount in millage.
A $5.5 mil levy, where will the money be used for if it passes?
Right. I mean, the money will be used for general operations, but there are some things that we're really trying to push out. For instance, more partnerships with our community organizations and businesses.
Give me an example of that, because that always sounds good.
It sounds good, but there's some actual facts behind that. Okay. Our internship program with Summa Health System for our kids who are in our Project Lead the Way program in biosciences at North High School. Mm-hmm. It's very important for those students to get some real exposure to potential careers, or funding the ACT fees for all of our juniors. A lot of those types of programs where we're actually trying to improve our graduation rate and improve our college-going rate by getting our students more experience out in the field. And that takes dollars.
$5.5 mils, is that enough? Because as I understand it, will raise $14 million a year for the period of time if it should pass. But when you start talking about deficits that could reach over $100 million, in just a few years, will this be enough?
No, we will have to make cuts. We've already started looking at those. We've been working with our unions and just reached an agreement where they are reducing health benefit costs by $2 million, and we'll be looking at some further adjustments in our health plan. And it's not just through paying the premium. Remember, a lot of employees pay a portion of their health plan through deductibles, co-pays, and co-insurance, where their out-of-pocket costs increase, and that helps lower the cost of the overall health insurance program. We'll also have to look at some of the things that we're doing in terms of supports to our classrooms. The thing that I don't want to see is having our classrooms negatively impacted. So we're looking at a lot of the supports that the district provides, such as our support services side, transportation, purchasing, custodial, and then looking at some of the academic supports that we provide and seeing how we can make those as efficient as possible.
Are your unions behind this?
They are working with us in partnership. There will be some very difficult conversations for sure, but we have been working together for quite some time, and I really believe that we can get there.
Break this down to the average homeowner whose taxes would go up. What does it mean to them if they say yes?
Right. For a median price home, about $57,000, we're talking about $7 per month extra in property tax.
Senior citizens? Senior
citizens. We look at those. It's same thing. I mean, they do have some exemptions, some breaks, for seniors. But, for the average homeowner, it's about $7 a month.
Okay, and the homestead exemption would help the seniors be even less than that, because a few homes in Akron are really at the $100,000 mark.
Exactly.
And so may not be fair. If it fails, what's at stake? Because where we see in the suburbs, it's always the threat of cutting sports and busing. That's not really practical in an inner-city urban school district, so what's at stake?
Absolutely. What we will have to look at is we will have to evaluate everything. We'll have to look at class sizes. We have actually lower class sizes, and that has been on purpose, because when kids come to us in kindergarten, we don't want to see 30 kids in a classroom. We would have to look at sports. We would have to look at our buildings, how they're configured. There could be additional building closures above what we previously identified. There will be a lot of central office folks that we'll have to evaluate. And we'll have to evaluate in terms of services that we provide to buildings, such as custodial. Maybe parts of the building are cleaned on different schedules. There will be a lot of work that we will have to do if this doesn't pass, because the cuts will have to be huge in order to make up that shortfall.
Critics will always say you should start at the top, you shouldn't start within the schools, keep it out of the classroom. Make the case to me that you've done that already.
Well, I mean, we've eliminated over 80, in the last round of cuts, 80 teachers, a number of administrators in central office. We are fairly thin at central office. There's more work that we are doing in terms of looking at where we can make cuts. But remember, we also need folks who can deal with some of the regulatory pieces of running our business, some of the accounting functions that are very important to running our business. And there's just certain things that, it's almost impossible to cut. But we're looking at that. I mean, I've had reductions in my own office, down to 1 secretary versus 2. We've eliminated some high, salaried positions in the past and have, gone to lowered salary people, move things around. Everyone's doing more work now than they have in the past. We just can't afford to have, an administrator, secretary, support staff for every position, everything that we do. And so we're really trying to consolidate and merge some activities into various departments.
And we've got about a minute left. Most people in Akron say they'll vote for something if they think it's headed in the right direction. Tell me, make the case on why you think the value of the education in Akron is increasing.
Well, I think, one, the cooperation and the partnership that we have with our business community, we really do understand, our focus has to be from cradle to career. It isn't about high school graduation. It's moving beyond that. It's about getting more of our kids into post-secondary education. We have the lowest number of schools now in academic emergency and academic watch than we ever had. We have more schools in continuous improvement, effective, and excellent. And so we're moving in the right direction. We have a lot more work to do. And it's about really reinventing ourselves to more of a 21st century learning organization where more kids have the technology, which is sorely needed by, our classrooms, moving to electronic textbooks and really, providing a more robust educational environment that's really focused on 21st century skills versus, the old way of doing business.
Okay, and current enrollment is in the 25,000?
About 22,000.
22,000.
Yes, 22,300 or so. Had an uptick at the elementary level this year. And we do have some very competitive programs, and one of the things we learned is that we have to improve our marketing strategies, and we're working with some folks out there to do that.
Okay. Superintendent David James, thank you very much. Issue 14, we'll talk to you after Election Day and see how it goes. My thanks to you. My thanks also to Phil, Ed, and Bob. And thanks to you as always. We'll see you right here next Friday for Newsnight. Good night.